So I'm Claire, I'm from what3words, and we have quite a big idea, which is to change the way that the world is addressed. We came up with this because we thought it would actually be really convenient if you could find your way around, regardless of which country you're in. So whether you're telling someone to meet you in the middle of Central Park, you're going on a tour of Tokyo, it would be really convenient if there was an addressing system that made that very, very simple. And this is because many of the best places in the world don't have addresses. So if you think about going hiking. You want to go hiking in the mountains with a friend, and you want to go to the best spot to watch the sunset. That is unlikely to have an address. If you're thinking about where you want to pitch your tent, or maybe you want to tell someone where the best street food is in Marrakesh. Again, a place without an address. If anyone's ever been to a festival, they'll know how much time they spend on their phone to each other, trying to find that particular street food van. And more as we think about Airbnb, opening up the world to these new and exciting experiences. These are places that very often don't have an address. I mean a postal address. So they don't have a way to talk about the location. And then you've got places in the world that do have addresses. So like, for example, New York. And you have a problem, which is that in many buildings, if I look them up in Google, I'll get a pin right in the middle of that building. Now, unless I'm trying to land a helicopter on the top of that building, that's actually not all that useful if I'm trying to find a particular entrance. So think about a stadium, a conference venue, maybe you live in a very built-up area and there are lots of different entrances to flats. So sometimes the pin in the middle of a building doesn't always help you find where you're trying to get to. Just try, Google is a great example of this. So the guys making the maps even struggle with this. So if you look up Google's head office in London, that pin drops right in the middle of the road. And I've been there, and that's not where the office actually is. But if you look it up in Google Maps, you get a pin right in the middle. This is true of all over the world. Addresses are complicated to use for humans. So I love this example. The BBC News was quite gleeful about this example because it was an American tourist. And he drove 4.5 hours to the wrong side of Iceland because he was trying to go to Laugavegur. My pronunciation is probably not right, but a place something along the lines of Laugavegur. And unfortunately for him, there are two places like that in Iceland, and the only difference between them is a tiny little R in the middle. And if you mistype that into your GPS and then trust your GPS, you drive for 4.5 hours and show up in a place without the hotel you were expecting. And the problem with this is that addresses are very easy to get wrong as a human being. But what we do with these addresses, we type them into machines. And it's actually really hard for the machine to know that we've made a mistake. So that Iceland example is one of many. If you think about London, we've got many roads called Church Road in London. If you don't live in London, and I say, oh yes, I live at 12 Church Road, it's very likely you will end up in the wrong place. And this, as we think about the technology of the future, this is an even bigger problem when we talk about voice. So Alexa, a lot of people have been talking about Alexa Echo and Google Home and these kind of technologies that are emerging. And similarly with cars, so a lot of what we're seeing towards a move towards voice navigation in cars. And this is a serious problem for addresses. Addresses and navigation, voice navigation, were not really designed to go together very well. The address system hasn't really changed in the last 100 years, and it was designed around post, not voice. So you have problems like this. This is the 50 Ammanford Road problem. 50 and 15 sound quite similar. It's very easy to get them wrong when you're hearing it from another human. It's very easy to get it wrong when you're inputting it into a machine. And you won't know you're wrong until you get there, because it's generally in the right area. You then show up, you phone your friend, and you're like, can't see your house. And you have to drive for 10 minutes. And the other part of that problem is this word Ammanford. So when we designed addresses, we thought, oh, maybe I'll make up a word. This is a nice sounding word. The problem with that is when you're trying to teach your machine to understand these words, you're having to programming in unique street names. So some countries, you've got hundreds of thousands of unique street names you've got to teach your voice recognition to understand, which is a very complex job if you're trying to do navigation with voice. So this is an even bigger problem as we think about the future. So we think about driverless cars. This is an Ollie made by the very cool local motors company. As you think about cars without human beings in them, it becomes even more important they're going to the right place, because you can't, I don't know how many of you have got an Uber and you've ended up being collected from the wrong place or dropped to the wrong place, but at least you've got a driver and you can phone each other, and between I can see a Starbucks, what can you see, you'll generally find out where you're meant to be. And without a driver, that becomes even more complicated. So as consumers, we're good at complaining. So we tell these companies, Airbnb and Uber and Google and Deliveroo, that addresses are not working for us. So we complain about it quite a lot, and it is frustrating. But imagine how frustrating it is if you're living in a country that in the country here, in the US, in the UK, where I'm from, we have addresses. They don't do the job we'd like, but we have them. Most of the world actually doesn't have addresses. So 75% of the world we're talking about. And that, you can see some examples of this. So for example, in South Africa, this is Kennedy Road, and there's not much happening on that map there, just a pin. In reality, all of those people live there. So that's what the reality is for those people who don't appear on that map. So that's one problem, people who are unmapped, they don't have addresses. But equally, when you do have mapping, so Google is doing a great job, and other companies with satellite imagery, you can create an amazingly up-to-date map in real time almost. But then you have a problem, which is you may have a map with roads on it, and you might have mapped the entire area, but if you haven't got names, you can't get street names from a satellite. So you can't work out exactly where you're visiting someone if they don't have a name for their road. And what this means is that there are 4 billion people in the world living without an address. So this is not about convenience. In the US and the UK, we're talking about convenience. I want my Uber in the right place. I'd like my pizza to arrive hot. In the rest of the world, you're talking about people who cannot register to vote sometimes. They might not be able to access finance. They might not be able to tell a midwife where they live so they can do a home visit, or they might not be able to get vaccinations for their children. So this is a really, really important problem. OK, so we wanted to solve this problem. And we figured it would be great if there was a universal addressing system. And it would work for the 25% of the world where addresses are annoying and frustrating, and it would work for all those people who don't have addresses at all. And there is one, and it looks like this. So this is coordinates. Coordinates are accurate, they're unique, they're universal, and they look like that. So I don't know how many of you have been invited for a drink at 25 degrees, 9 minutes, 4:0. It's not a common occurrence. So we wanted to take all of the power of this, of a universal, accurate addressing system that covers the whole world, and make it human-friendly. So what we did is we divided the entire planet into a grid of 57 trillion squares. Every single square is labeled, it's 3 meter by 3 meter square, and every single one is labeled with an address made of 3 words from the dictionary. So this is unique. So there's only one table, chair, spoon in the world. Our office in London is Index Home Raft. If I tell you to come and see us at Index Home Raft, that's the only 3 meter by 3 meter square, I guess 10 foot by 10 foot here, that you can end up in the entire world. So that's completely unique. And this means you have a way to talk about any spot in the world, whether you're asking Amazon to deliver a package to you in rural Alaska, whether you're trying to find the right entrance to a stadium for VIP entrance or delivery entrance or emergency services. Every single place in the world has a unique address. And this is the first system that was ever designed with voice navigation in mind. So what we also had to bear in mind was that people speak different languages. So every one of these squares has a GPS coordinate. It has a 3-word address in English, and has a 3-word address so far in 14 other languages, and we're working on those all the time. So you have an address in German, in French, in Spanish, in Swahili, in Arabic, for every single square in the world. So for example, if you wanted to tell someone to meet you at this bench in Berlin, if they're a German speaker, give the German address. If they're an English speaker, give them an English address. And that's the only place they can possibly end up. Now, when I said we designed this specially for voice, we designed it for human beings. So it's about human beings communicating with machines. So instead of putting 12 Elm Street near another bit of Elm Street, we thought, well, what's happening here is people are typing these or saying these into devices. So we really, really care about error detection. So similar combinations get put so far apart, you know when you're wrong. So if I say, come to table, chair, lamps, and you mishear or you misremember or you mistype it, if you type table, chair, lamp, your device will know you're in the US, you're probably not trying to drive to Australia, so it can correct you. So it can have this instant error detection that we've built into the system. So what's really happening here, and we have an application, so it's a free app, and you right now can look it up, the 3-word address of all of your homes. You've got one already, it's pre-assigned, so you'll have an address for your front door, your back door, the treehouse in your garden. All of these have 3-word addresses, so you can look them up in the app. Receiving Salmon Storyline, this is an address in Haiti. So this is one of the camps for the internally displaced people in Haiti. And it has an address for that exact location of that particular shelter. And the technology-wise, this is a piece of code which converts those 3 words into coordinates. So you can use it on any map, any navigation, any routing system in the world. And it's that piece of code you can build into anything you like. So we've got an API, which basically means you can take it and you can build exciting things with it, which lots of people have done. So we use it in about 170 countries around the world in all kinds of different ways now. For example, if you want to go to Singapore, so this is a brilliant app called PearlShare. They help you find hidden gems when you're traveling. You're looking for those little pearls to delight you as you travel and explore. And they'll give you the 3-word address of the exact location you're trying to get to. We used it at the Olympics, so we used in the transit app for the Olympics because, of course, the velodrome has 6 entrances and you want to make sure you're going to the right one. We used in Airbnb bookings, for example, with a company called Air Sorted, so they make sure that you find the right door to your Airbnb. And we used in e-commerce. So you're thinking about making deliveries. You think about making deliveries in Saudi Arabia, where the addresses are particularly in rural areas, they have a real problem with addressing infrastructure. And now, even if you don't have an address, a traditional postal address, you have 3 words that you can put in to make sure you get a delivery. It's used in sat-navs. You can see here, these are other applications they've just built in our code. So you can just type those 3 words in and route there. So Jaguar Land Rover, for example, use us. So if you want to go adventuring in the desert in your Land Rover, you can use 3-word addresses in their app. You can equally use them with autonomous vehicles. So we're working with quite a lot of the companies building these cars of the future without any drivers in, and you can use 3-word addresses. And quite shortly, in the next few months, we're going to be announcing a partnership with a car company. So you'll be able to press that button on your steering wheel with the voice and say, take me to Apple Banana Spoon, and your car will know exactly where it's going. So that's the future of it. And it means you can basically, it's a human-friendly way to input accurate coordinates, accurate addresses into any device.
Alexa,
and then,
go to location.
Here's an example.
Public warns artist.
Going to location. Public warns artist.
What3words enabled me to route my drone in a way that GPS couldn't allow. I was using just 3 words to send my drone to a unique, precise location. There was like a facepalm moment where I was just like, of course.
So this is one that they've built with Alexa. This is an Alexa plugin. So you can use Alexa to tell your drone to go to a 3-word address and know it will end up in exactly the right place. And then for the 75% of the world, so when we talked about places that don't have addresses, we're now used in all kinds of ways in disaster response. So the United Nations have been using us in disaster response work. After an earthquake, you don't have street addresses anymore. You can't use those, but it's really, really critical that you get things and people to the right place. So we used to make medicine deliveries in slums and townships. In Addis Ababa, you can use it to order takeaway food if you ever visit Ethiopia. It's used to make drone deliveries in Costa Rica, because Costa Rica has a beautiful addressing system, which is mostly based on walk for 400 meters, turn left, walk for 30 meters, there's a tree, which is very poetic, but not quite so useful for a drone. And then we've actually seen a really fascinating thing happen in the last year, which is that whole countries have started to adopt this. So this is a photo from Mongolia. It's a beautiful country that I would highly recommend visiting. And Mongolia has very good tech penetration, lots of smartphones, but unfortunately doesn't really have addressing infrastructure outside of the capital city. And so they've now adopted what3words as an official addressing system. So you can see here Mongolian and English 3-word addresses that you can use in all kinds of ways. So the government use it to tell you where the hospitals are, or the schools, or the water points. Or Pizza Hut will deliver you a pizza in Mongolia using a 3-word address. You can use it to find the bus stops. This is literally printed on a bus stop in Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital. So you can use these addresses, and the Mongol Post, which is the postal service, are able to visit people's homes, give them a sticker, because these addresses never change. So if you don't have a smartphone, someone can give you a sticker and say, this is your 3-word address, and you can use that to communicate with the emergency services, with your friends, with anyone, with a delivery company. And so the postal service are working to deliver mail. And yes, a few weeks ago, a lady who was 80 years old received her first ever letter using this 3-word addressing system, which was an invitation to the Queen's birthday party at the British Embassy. So now, and it wasn't just Mongolia, so it's been followed by 6 other countries who've now adopted what3words. Mongolia was the innovator, but 6 other countries and many more on the way adopting this as an official address to make sure that everybody who needs an address has one. I just wanted to finish with an example of an NGO we're working with. So one of the things we love is that because our app is free and it's out there now, people use it in all kinds of amazing ways. And this NGO got in touch with us, and I first spoke to the doctor who runs it, and he said to me on the phone, he started by saying, Claire, women are dying. I have a real problem with maternal mortality, and it is because we cannot find them. So people phone an ambulance, and I say to them, where do you live? And they tell me, and they are describing in a township, in an informal settlement, they are trying to describe to me where they live, and I cannot find them. So he has now started using what3words. He has actually employed young people who were previously unemployed to visit homes, give them their 3-word address, usually on a piece of paper, and says, put it in your Bible so you don't lose it. These are the 3 words you need to say if you're going to phone the emergency services. So I'm just going to show you a quick clip of what that looks like in action. So these are people who've never had an address before in many, many cases, and this is the first time they've ever had a way to explain where they are.
If you've got a problem, you're sick, You phone for the ambulance, it takes time to come. Maybe you phone from 8 in the morning, then it's gonna come late at 6 o'clock. But now I think it's gonna be easy for them.
As we work as an EMRS, we don't have actually the boundaries. So we work the whole of Durban. It's very difficult because firstly, they don't have road names written, and they also don't have house numbers.
With this new system, it looks like it's going to be very easy for these emergency services to locate wherever the problem is, because it's precise. Once a location, a 3-meter by 3-meter location is given a name, then the authorities can go straight to that place. So it's going to make life very easy for the community around the township.
The system of what3words is going to make our life so easy that we can get to these people in time. It's not going to be only me feel good. All of our public will feel good about it.
That's what3words, and we'd love for you to come and join in and use your 3-word addresses when you're meeting in Central Park or when you're giving someone a wedding invitation. And there are all kinds of ways you can use these to find each other, to find your way around, to talk to brands about where they can find you. So that's what3words.